So today we are in the book of Joshua. Okay? So slowly but surely we progress, and this is, if you can count, it's the sixth book in the Bible. Okay? So we have Genesis, we have Exodus, we have Leviticus, we have Numbers, Deuteronomy, and now we have Joshua. And it is reflected in the main themes. Okay? As the sixth book of the Bible, the book of Joshua picks up the theme of creation of man. Because on the sixth day, in correlation with days of creation, the sixth day is about creation of man, mostly. And we see how Joshua matures from the guy who has to be encouraged in the very beginning. It's God and people tell him, be strong and courageous. We will obey you as we obeyed Moses. And, when people say that, it's kind of a hilarious joke because we know how they obeyed Moses. But still, he had to be encouraged at the very end, in the very beginning of the book, but at the very end of the book, it is very important to notice that, especially in chapter 24, he is ready to set himself up against the whole camp of Israel. He says, if you need to figure out who you're going to serve. Are you going to serve the Lord, or are you going to serve all other gods? And you do whatever you want. And me and my house will serve the Lord. We know that phrase, but we need to understand that this is said in the context. It's kind of take courage, take guts, to say it. You have all other people who might be for you or might be against you. And regardless of what you guys do, I will do what is right. Okay? So that's an important theme in the book. The main narrative theme in the book, we have two parts, as you see in the structure. One of them is the conquest. Okay? So we conquer the land. Then we also settle in the land. We see what tribes go where, what kind of pieces or parts of the land they will get. And as you can see in the structural stuff, okay, we have those two parts. And the first one, this is not the only way to outline. We've talked about the structures. I just found this in one very cool book. It's by David Dorsey. It's called Literature Structures of the Old Testament. Many interesting features about the Bible. I think it's just nice to notice that you can have not only what we call chiastic structures when you parallel the ends and they kind of go the parallel passages toward the middle. Okay, you have a central pivotal point, sometimes turning point, but you also can have a parallel structures. And it's very cool to see here and observe that when we talk about the conquest, it's kind of like in two phases, and we can even map out the parallel events. For example, we have intro to the first phase, we have intro to the second phase. We have believing Canaanite, Rahab, and we have believing Canaanites. It's not one person, it's Gibeonites. So when you follow the text, it's like, when you read the first part and the second part kind of follows the same outline, you can expect what will happen next. Then we have a miracle of stopping Jordan. Okay? Then in the second part, what a surprise, we have a miracle. Sun stopped. I was thinking about this basically the whole last night, so if I will say something weird, it's because I didn't have much sleep. Because I was seriously, I was trying to think about stopping the sun. Because in reality, it can be achieved only two, as far as I can understand, it can be achieved only two ways. One way is that the earth will stop moving and be at the same position up against the sun, or sun will not be the center of our universe, but also will begin to move with not the same necessarily speed, but with the same, same direction to reflect the turning of the earth. I don't know how it happened. Seriously, that's why we call it a miracle, But Bible says it, so I believe it, That's for the Lord, the Creator of the universe, to figure out how He did it. Okay, but my point is, we have point 1, point 2, point 3, and then we have a same outline that follows that. Then we have a very interesting story about the ceremonies that they performed at Gilgal. Okay, and that's where the bunch of guys, all of them had to be circumcised. The reason is because the people who were in the wilderness, remember, when we are in the book of Numbers, we have a society who rejected to come into the land. So everybody who were in the wilderness, 20 years and younger, survived, and everybody else, died. So you have a next generation who have not performed the circumcision. But the thing is, you cannot ceremonially celebrate Passover if you are not circumcised. So you go into the land, and it's a time of Passover, they have to celebrate it, so they have to be circumcised. But on the other hand, it's somewhat a test of faith. Let me show you. So we are coming from the east toward west. We have a Jordan River here. Okay, it parted. And a bunch of those guys crossed. Okay, and somewhere toward kind of inland, we have Jericho with towers. Okay, and they are sitting here. So the question is, should we circumcise before we attack, or maybe we can wait and circumcise and celebrate everything after we attack? The thing is, if we are here in the camp and we have a tent, the Lord here, a bunch of people over here, and we circumcise, what's going to happen? Okay, as far as I know, I'm not really big, I don't have much knowledge about that, but as far as I know, if you're an adult and you circumcise, it takes you a few days to get over that. You are not really fast runner, you are not really good at fighting, you are not really good, therefore you are not really good at defending yourself. So, if these guys will find out that all of the male guys over here are circumcised, there is a chance that they will attack. So when the Lord tells them you have to circumcise, it's a test of faith. Okay, are you going to rely on the Lord that if He told you to do something, He will provide and protect you? Or you going to win over Jericho, and then you will be able to claim that you did it with your own, mighty hand. This is your achievement. Okay? So that's an important lesson on grace on one hand and trust to the Lord on the other hand. And the similar thing we have here, the ceremony of Makedah. So I'm not going to explain it. I leave it purposefully for you to read at home. And then we have conquest of Jericho. And the next one is we have a faithless Israelite. Okay, and the faithless Israelite is Achan, who stole some stuff from what was in Jericho. Okay, and therefore, when they tried to attack Ai, everything failed. And then we have a conclusion of phase 1, and the same thing we have a conquest of Hatzor first, but then some of the Canaanites hardened their hearts, and we have a problem there. And then we have a conclusion of this. And then the second part is you see the settlement. And again, it is arranged does not arranged parallel, it's arranged chiastically. And we see how parts go toward the center. So we have introduction and conclusion, and we have Transjordan tribes. Okay, what's Transjordan tribes? It's Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, who decided to settle. Okay, if this is Jordan, if this is the land, this is just only part. So this is the land. We have some guys who settled on the northern part of this side of Jordan, but God allowed them to be there with only one, not exception.
Stipulation.
With only one condition, I'm sorry. They had to participate in the conquest war with everybody else. So, when they will participate and everybody settles, then they will settle too. So they cannot have their settlement and these guys deal on their own. So it was one united group of Israelites. It's all 12 tribes who participate in the conquest. And we see the mentioning of Transjordan tribes in the beginning and at the very end, block B. Now, C and C prime talks about Levites. Okay? And you do know, or do remember, that Levites actually did not get any part of the land. Okay? They would live in what is called cities of refuge. Okay? So it's a city where anybody, if he did unintentional murder, can run into and can stay in the city, but they would not have any land. But Levites, it would be like 10 cities of refuge all over the land. And Levites would live there, or they would also take the positions of what we would call pastors today. They would be liturgical leaders of the local synagogues all over the place, all over the land. And then going to the middle, D and D prime is very interesting. We have an allotment to two guys adults who were able to come over Jordan from the previous generation. First is Caleb. He represents tribe of Judah. And then we have Joshua, who represents tribe of Joseph. He is, I'm blanking. Okay, let's say just he's son of Joseph. Ephraim. Then we have two non-Rachel tribes, Judah here and Simeon on the other hand, and we have two Rachel tribes, F and F prime, is Joseph and Benjamin, and the seven tribes, allotment of 7 tribes is in the middle. So that's kind of main plot, main story. We go from people who are on the other side of Jordan to the people who are settled in the land, and everything comes to a full peace, full rest. Okay? We have happy ending. Even though for us it doesn't sound like that. What the book of Joshua ends with? Who remembers without opening? Because it's a very important thing. It's the very last statement. What's the very end of the book of Joshua? Okay, open it up. Please open the Bibles. You came to Bible study.
What does Rachel mean?
Rachel is Rachel. It's a name of Jacob's wife.
Okay.
He had Leah and he had Rachel. So at the very end of book of Joshua, we see verse 33. And Eleazar, the son of Aaron, died, and they buried him in Gibeah, the town of Phinehas, his son, which he had been given him in the hill of country of Ephraim. And I told you that's a happy ending.
Maybe.
It is happy ending. Trust me. Trust me, it is. We don't think that way because every death in our environment is somewhat bad. Now, it is a sad story for the family, but for everybody else, it's a happy stuff. Why? Because after the death of the high priest, and Eleazar was a high priest, okay, son of Aaron. When the high priest dies, people who got stuck in the cities of refuge could go home, and nobody can have any court or any legal accusations against them. So the death of the high priest releases everybody who were even trapped again in the cities of refuge. Okay? So by the end of book of Joshua, everybody, literally everybody, found their rest in their own place. Okay? So that's an important thing to know. Now, there is another important theme the theme of, as I said, faithfulness in the service. Because both Achan and Joshua also falls into trap of like thinking for themselves. We kind of very like to put fingers at Judah who betrayed Jesus, okay? But we always need to remember, first Judah betrays Jesus, then everybody leaves him in the garden, okay? And we have in chapter 7, we have a first example where Achan sins. He steals from what should have been given to the Lord. But then Joshua and everybody actually together sin without consulting with the Lord, and that's why they lose their the battle of Ai. Okay. There is also an important theme in the book that I put it purposefully: the desire of nations. Just to kind of give you a hint, the book has a wonderful piece, Jesus, the desire of nations. Okay, so the desire of nations, Gentiles, to join the covenant is depicted in the story. We have at least two samples. One is Rahab, we'll talk about this in a second, and Gibeonites. Okay, so what about Rahab? So Rahab is a lady who she was running an inn. Okay, sometimes she is presented in a little bit more ill way, with an ill way repute, picture. But what we know, as far as we know, is she had an inn in the wall. Okay, so the walls of the city are not like a regular wall. People could live inside. People could stay inside. It's like a thick wall, probably 20 feet, thickness. And there were rooms there. And if you would have a gate here.
So this is a big building.
The wall itself is a big building, yes. So if you would have a gate here, people can go in. It's not only the gate itself, like a wooden gate that you need to break, but people would, if it's open, people could go in. Inside of the gate, if you look from above, kind of like a plan, blueprint, there will be rooms where the elders would sit and decide who can go in and who cannot. So people would stay here. So it's kind of like a customs. Okay, so they would be like custom officers. So it was like a thick stuff. She wasn't here. Rachel wasn't here. She had some part of the wall, and she would have her inn there. So that's why people who would go immediately when they would pass through the wall, they would turn left or right depending where the inn was, and go and can stay overnight and so on and so forth. But it's very interesting that she wants to be in the community of believers so badly that she's ready to betray all of that. She was converted, so she is a good person, good example of how people wanted to be, in the unity of with Israelites because of what God did to them. And that's what she says. We've heard about what God did to you many years ago. Now think about that. So theoretically, there was no reason to walk around the desert for 38 years. They could have come in. Those guys were scared for 38 years. They lived in fear that the Israelites are coming. They're going to defeat us. It's sometimes, it's good for us as a church to remember that. Sometimes the people outside are so scared that we actually could have, spread the church and spread the gospel much faster than we do, because we think about other stuff. But the point is, the agreement was that when they will attack, she would leave a red thread from her window, okay? And when everybody will be attacked, that piece of property will be protected, okay? What red thread from the window, okay, let's put it this way, somewhat simpler. What red thread on the wall might remind you of?
Blood.
The blood, Passover. Okay, now think about that. We have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, okay, Deuteronomy, Joshua, and Judges. Okay, where do we find blood on the wall? Here and here. See, that's why those books are in parallel. Okay, it is Joshua that tells us the answer to a very important question that we find in Exodus. Okay, and we'll talk about this in a second. I just want to kind of get you thinking. So we have parallels between the themes, like in Leviticus, we have rules for Levites. We have in Deuteronomy, we have rules for the whole community. Okay, so that's just aside. So that's kind of like a Passover moment, but for her. Honestly, not for her personally, for her family. Okay, again, and we've talked about this in the Passover, in Exodus, in the original Passover. Do you have to be Israelite to be safe? No. You have to be in the house which is protected by the blood. Okay, the very same thing. Whoever was in her chambers or in her quarters, in her mansion, whatever that thing was, in her inn, were protected. Okay, that's important. So it's not a people's achievement. It's God's grace that protects them over everything. With Gibeonites, it's a little bit more fun because those guys, again, they saw the people coming. So we are kind of past. We are past Jericho. We're past our crisis at Ai. We are going a little bit toward north, and we see a tribe of people who are wearing, really torn apart clothing, and their bread is, very old and, not really nice tasting, and so on and so forth. So Joshua asked them, "Where are you guys coming from?" "Oh, we are from so far away." "Okay, we can have an agreement with you." So they made a deal. Turns out they are right after the hill, on the other side. So that's one of the examples where Joshua should have been a little bit more cautious and asked the Lord. But in reality, it actually brought Gibeonites into the service of the Lord, because they were responsible for cutting the wood and bringing the water to the sanctuary from that day forward. Okay? And now, to conclude this, that I will not forget, what book of Exodus begins with? The book of Exodus begins that we have X number of people from tribes of Israel, from the family of Israelites in Egypt. And then what happens? Then there was a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph, and he turned them into slavery. Okay, cool. I understand. And the historians say that there was a upper Egypt, kind of like south, more hillside, and there was a lower Egypt. That's where Joseph was. So the dynasty from upper Egypt came into the lower and took it over, and they did not have influence of Joseph. That's fine. It's all historically interesting. The question is, why did God allow that to happen?
Testing.
It's even more fun, actually. The answer is more fun, because the thing is, we do not know that answer till we read the very last chapter in the book of Joshua. Let's go there. In Joshua 24, we find something very, very interesting. In Joshua 24, where we have this wonderful, famous speech of Joshua, and especially verses 14 and 15. Now therefore, verse 14. Now therefore, fear the Lord and serve Him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers, He's talking to this generation about their previous generation, He's talking actually about his classmates, So put away gods that your fathers served beyond the river, and we talk about beyond the river means in the times when Abraham was still alive. Now, there is an important part. beyond the river, and in Egypt, and served the Lord. So the thing is, what happened in Egypt? Why they ended up in slavery? They were serving foreign gods. They were serving Egyptian gods, and that's why God said, okay, you really want to you like those gods? You might want to, do you like their cult? You might want to like their culture. So they ended up in slavery. And it's very interesting, kind of heads up. This is the last chapter in Joshua. That's going to be the whole trigger for the plot of book of Joshua. I'm sorry, for the book of Judges, for the next one. It's kind of like a connector with the next book, because in the next book, it's like a cycle. That's what we will see. Let's try the gods of Moabites. Okay, you want the Moabites? Then Moabites come, take your harvest, leave you with no grain whatsoever, and go home. Oh, Lord, please save us. So he says the Redeemer, the Deliverer, some judge, and the judge deals with the Moabites. Then they live peacefully for a little bit, and then what about trying gods of Ammonites, and so on and so forth. It's like a whole. We'll talk about this next week. So that's about Joshua, and so that's an important thing to remember, that Exodus is answered in the book of Joshua. Okay. One more important thing, in your other side, you see the reflections in other parts of the Bible. It's somewhat self-explanatory with the exception of one thing, the last thing. The initial layout of the book of Acts resembles the sequence of the first part of book of Joshua. Okay? So I'm not gonna, I didn't put it here because I didn't have enough space, but it is. So now, that's how it looks like. So when Luke wrote the book of Acts, he most likely had Joshua in mind, because instead of a physical conquest of the land, we have a spiritual conquest of the land. So what we have in Joshua chapters 1 and 2, we have preparation, and in Acts 1, we have preparation. We're basically preparing here to attack the Jericho. Here we are prepared for the power from above to come, and then we will spiritually attack. We will give a witness in Jerusalem. So then in chapters 3 to 5 we have attack on Jericho. Okay, and we succeed. In 2 to 4 in Acts, we spiritually attack Jerusalem and we win. Basically the whole city, if not everybody personally are converted, but many people take this new group of people who believe that Jesus is the Messiah with reverence. And they praise God and revere Him. Okay? God. Now we have a problem. Okay? In chapter 7, we have a story about Ahab who takes something that technically belongs to the Lord. What do we have right after that in Acts? We have a couple of people, Ananias and Sapphira, who take something as they claimed was given to the Lord. Okay? That's the whole thing. That's the whole Peter's spiel. Nobody forced you to sell everything. But if you said that you sell it for this much money, and you bring it, yet hiding some portion for yourself, you are now claiming that you did give everything what you sold to God. Now you're taking something from God. So, he's dead, they are dead. Now, in chapter 9, we see those Gibeonites, the people from outside who came, joined the tribes, and ended up in the service of the Lord. In chapter 6, we see dedication of deacons, and one of them, Stephen, actually, is a Gentile. So he is an outsider who comes in the community of believers and is able to serve like a deacon, and they had in the modern language, they would have a similar diaconal what would that be? Responsibilities, sorry. And then in chapter 10, they are attacked. And in chapter 7, Stephen is attacked. Now, in both Joshua and Acts, we first go south. And that's why in chapter 8, we see Philip going by the Gaza. Okay? Again, to remind you the map. So first, Philip goes by Gaza and meets with the eunuch, okay, that goes toward Ethiopia. And then everything else goes up north. We see Paul traveling toward Damascus, and all his missions are going north and northwest, okay? Same thing here. Even in our, no, it's not here, whatever. Not important. So we first deal with south of the land, and then we deal with the north of the land. So it's very interesting to see how Acts kind of mirror or parallel Joshua or build up on what we have in Joshua. But again, as you know, and we always need to remember, sorry, that should be trashed. In Ephesians 6:12, we have an important verse to see how paradigm changes from Joshua to Acts. What do we have in Ephesians 6:12? Our fight is not what? Against flesh and blood. Thank you. Okay? So here we deal with flesh and blood. We really attack cities. Walls really fall. We really take some people captives, and Gibeonites really, with their flesh and blood, become the ministers or diaconal sub-ministers at the tabernacle. Here, we do not deal with flesh and blood. We deal with people and their attitudes and their spirits. Okay? So that's important. Why this shift happens? Because Jesus came in flesh and blood. So now we deal with the spiritual stuff. So if before the cross, we've talked about this earlier. If before Jesus, all the theophanies were more in spiritual realm. You know, the God would appear as an angel of the Lord, and we deal with real enemies. Here, the God appeared as a human being, but we deal with spiritual entities. Okay?
All they're doing is fighting.
We always fight. The question is how. We either fight, physically, under old rulings, or we fight spiritually. We have to defend. We use the same words, defend ourselves, protect ourselves, be on your guard and things like that. Be mentally prepared to fight, and so on and so forth. So that's the basic stuff that I would like to share, and glasses in my hand. The only thing is I would like you to point out is the memory verse. It's I like it. So may this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. So then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. And the book of the law talks about 5 books of Moses. So again, speaking of from historical perspective, when people claim that the book of Moses did not exist till 5th century, that's just, what was Joshua given, So that's an important thing. Okay? Questions or comments?